Oh, ready.
You can still.
As long
You can
as
start
we
with
can
the
get
quorum.
started with quorum.
Yeah.
All right, let's get started.
You're all set.
Okay. So it looks like we're still waiting for a couple members, but we do have quorum. We have 6 out of our 7 plus 3 alternate members. So, for some here, and I have this there. Okay. So, welcome. This is the Hyannis Main Street Waterfront Historic District Commission. This is April 2nd, 2025, 6:30 p.m. To all persons deemed interested or affected by the Town of Barnstable's Hyannis Main Street Waterfront Historic District Commission ordinance under Chapter 112, Article 3 of the Code of Town of Barnstable, you are hereby notified that a hearing is being held at Town Hall, 367 Main Street, Hyannis, Mass. Selectmen's Conference Room, 2nd floor, 6:30 p.m. on Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025. This meeting of April 2nd, 2025 is being recorded and broadcast on the Town of Barnstable's Government Access Channel in accordance with MGL Chapter 30A, Section 20. The chair must inquire as to whether anyone else is recording the meeting, and if so, to please make their presence known. But I did turn mine off. Otherwise, if you could make your cell phones so that they do not disturb the meeting, please. Calling the meeting to order. Commissioner Perry Wentworth, we're still expecting. Commissioner Conrad Watson.
Here.
Commissioner Kevin Matthews.
Here.
Commissioner Cornelius Crowley.
Here.
Commissioner Jennifer Hinckley Needham, not here. Commissioner Matthew Clark, not here. Commissioner Laura Cronin.
Here.
Commissioner Jack Kay, I think we received notice he was unable to make it, right? Commissioner Tom Doherty.
Here.
And I, Cheryl Powell, am also here. So the meeting is called to order by roll call. Welcome to everyone who's come. Can I please ask staff to introduce themselves?
Karen Pina, Admin Assistant, Planning and Development Department.
Corey Pacheco, Senior Planner, Planning and Development.
Thank you. And we also have the honor to have our town council liaison, Town Councilor Charles Bloom, joining us tonight. Thank you very much. And we also, I could ask one of the town attorney's office who's here tonight for us to announce her name in that.
Sure. Allison Cogliano, Assistant Town Attorney.
And thank you very much for joining us tonight. Okay, I think I've got everybody. Thank you to our guests. So, new business. Daniel Smith, DBA Smith Family Popcorn, 541 Main Street, Hyannis, map 308, parcel 130. There are actually 2 applications for this. One is for a new main entry door, and the second is for a sign. Is there someone here to represent that?
Yep, I am.
Would you like to come up, please? If
Sure.
I could please ask you to sign in, and then when you're ready to state your name. Just to remind everybody that we no longer have the microphones here, but the sound is actually picked up even better anywhere from the ceiling, even in the hallway. So just be careful. Be cognizant of that. Okay. Please tell us about your project.
Sure.
Oh, and actually, I want to ask you first.
Yeah.
Do you want to take the 2 together or separate?
I guess what makes it.
Whatever you're comfortable with. If we take them together, you can just do the presentation for both.
Cool.
Okay, and then what we'll do is I'll give you another option at the end on how, if you want to have the vote for both or
Yeah.
separate.
Yeah,
Okay?
we'll just keep them together for now.
Sounds good.
Easy enough. Kind of makes sense together. So this is for the beer garden that's next to our popcorn shop that we have. So we're doing a couple different changes to the beer garden this spring. First change, major change, we're putting in a sprinkler system into our building, and that's gonna allow us to get entertainment inside. Right now, we're just limited to entertainment outside, and I know I won't bore you with all the details of it, but basically, if I have a band in the summer that's outside and it rains, I'm just out and I'm paying that band, things like that. So trying to get more weather independent and also more year-round business. So it makes sense for us to kind of take this next phase forward into this more of like a, we're becoming more of like almost like a live entertainment venue rather than a traditional restaurant. There's plenty of really, really good restaurants on the street already, so we're trying to kind of carve our niche into more of like this live entertainment space for the whole town, really. Okay, so with that, because we are adding live entertainment inside, due to our increase in occupancy, we have to change out our main entry door from a single door to a double door. And it's just to allow more people to exit at one time if there's an emergency. So, we can see the images that I have right now. Up top there's the elevation. It's pretty simple, kind of, taking the door that we have now and just replacing it with a double door. I kind of went through and, I think a lot of this meeting is just appropriateness of, does it fit in with the street? So I think it does. There's plenty of other businesses that have other double doors, and it's just kind of your standard storefront door. Ours is going to be black. So that's the door part. Next, the other kind of bigger change that we're doing is we're changing our name from Smith Family Beer Garden to Neptune's. And the reason for that is that, Smith Family Beer Garden started as just the open space next to Smith Family Popcorn. And, it was just a fun kind of like sister business to our existing popcorn shop. And it was entirely outside the first year. We had kind of a smaller makeshift bar in our garage doors that were open, and it made sense. It was a beer garden, and it's just kind of like, we mostly serve beer. At this point, now that we have the large outdoor space, but we also have 3,000 square feet of inside space. And we have built a brand new bar inside last spring. And as we're just kind of doing more inside and, again, trying to be more year-round business. And so I think we were thinking the name Smith Family Beer Garden just kind of limited us to, it's just an outdoor space, so, I won't go there at night. Or it's just an outdoor space, I'm not going to go there when it's 30 degrees outside. And then the other thing is, I'd stand at the door almost every single night in the summer and greet people when they walked in, and was a friendly goodbye when they left. And a lot of people walking the street would look up at the sign and go, beer garden, not really in the mood for beer. We have a full bar. So the name was limiting in a way. And so we kind of wanted to just call it Neptune's, God of the Sea, kind of fits in with Cape Cod, fits in with our statue. And it's just more of like an umbrella name of, something that's just more flexible. So this is a sign. It's going to be, it's going to replace the sign that we have right now. It's a PVC material that I'm going to carve with my CNC machine. It's the same machine I use to carve all of our boardwalk planks when people sponsor a board. Same issue with appropriateness. It's going to be white lettering over a black kind of background, and like I said, carved into it. So, tried to take a couple pictures that match the same aesthetic that we were trying to achieve in that. So again, I think it also fits in, and open to any questions. I'll shut up for a bit and open to any questions.
I'm sad to see the name change.
Okay.
I totally get that.
Yeah.
And for anyone who doesn't know, the statue of Neptune
It's right there.
is so cool.
Thanks.
It's really cool.
It is really nice.
Yeah, we limboed back and forth of the name change. But I'm a Smith. It's like this kind of thing. We're still keeping the Smith Family Popcorn, and there's something that's super cool. Because my parents are retired and they help out, whether it's in the kitchen or for events and things like that. And people always come in, they're like, "Are you Smith?" They'll ask all my bartenders, "Are you Smith?" There's something super cool about it. So it is sad to see that name go, but we still got the popcorn. We're still growing that in a lot of different ways. So, yeah.
Are you still going to be serving the barbecue outside and stuff like that during the summertime? And
Yeah. So we're
not that it matters, but I'm just wondering because I
Yeah, so we stopped our kind of exclusivity with the barbecue. So we do just kind of simple, chicken fingers, fries, onion rings, that type of stuff. And then we're gonna explore different ways of getting, local food trucks in or things like that, and just kind of partner with other people to, handle more food options for us,
Gotcha.
and just kind of keep it fresh and keep it varied. And it's another thing to kind of for us to blast out on Instagram that, hey, come down and check out this band or this duo playing, and hey, by the way, we have X food truck that's going to come in and be serving burgers.
It's a great place to, on a summer night, summer day, to sit out there and enjoy some food and drink.
Thanks.
I go there, I've been there quite a bit, so it's a good
Very
place.
nice. Oh, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have the dill pickle popcorn now. It's Smith Family Popcorn because you took it away for a while and that was
Yeah.
disappointing. But now it's a full-time flavor.
Yeah.
So I've bought at least 2 or 3 bags.
So another very polarizing thing. I can't stand pickles, so I was
Oh.
like the bottleneck on that for sure. It was a monthly flavor, but any month that we brought it out, it like dwarfed all of our other sales for other months. So it was like, all right, we have to.
Tell the other Smiths, thank you for bringing
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I remember when you came before us for the statue and the other things that you did there. And it was rather amusing. Trying to think if anyone was here on the commission at that time. I don't think so.
Yeah, Laura
So,
was there.
were you there? And I remember at that time we had because Neptune is the Roman
Mm-hmm.
god of the sea, and we had a commissioner with us who was Greek.
Yeah.
Really thought you should have gone with the other way.
Yeah, Poseidon versus
Yeah.
Poseidon, yeah.
it's interchangeable. I'm not gonna correct
That's all right.
anybody if they,
He took it well.
Yeah.
I think you've done a great job. Any questions on the presentation? For clarification?
No questions.
I think everything you're doing down there is fantastic.
Yep.
I feel the
It's
same way.
improved that corner, it's like 1,000%.
Thanks. I appreciate it. We work really hard, but we're invested in Main Street, obviously. So we've had other popcorn stores in other areas, and there's something about like the intangibles of Main Street that we kind of keep coming back to. So we've doubled down, tripled down. Now we're kind of quadrupling down with what we're doing. So no, I really appreciate it.
Again, another question that has nothing to do with this vote, but I'm wondering. So you have live entertainment inside at night or whatever. I know you got those garage doors. Do you have to close those with a sound ordinance? Or can you have them open so people are walking by and hear the music and go, oh my God, I gotta go check that out?
Yeah, that's gonna be a bit of a testing phase for us. Because we still have to adhere to any
Sure.
noise ordinance or anything like
Yeah.
that. So our plan is that we'll still have kind of acoustic sets and duos outside from like a 6 to 9 spot, and then we'll have either a band or maybe even a DJ at that like 9 to midnight, 9:30 to 12:30 type slot. And like we said, depending on who that act is, I'm gonna be outside, making sure I'm not getting in trouble with anybody, and if the garage doors need to close, then they need to close. It just is what it is. But
Good job.
yeah.
On the outside part, are people allowed to bring dogs in that or not?
Yeah, we allow dogs just in the outside spot as long as they're leashed,
Behaved,
well
yeah.
trained, things like that.
Don't want to go
You know.
table to table to eat the food.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, knock on wood, we haven't had any problems yet. And
Don't say yeah.
yeah, no, exactly. But no, it's been good. We, due to health department, we obviously can't have them inside or anything
Right,
like
right.
that. So yeah.
I know a number of places to allow animals, just because people watching this will realize they can take their dogs if they're outside. Okay, anything else?
It's wonderful inside and outside. It's done, I've been there several times, so it's changed and evolved.
Is there anything else on the presentation?
That's it.
Can
That's
I
it for me.
ask staff input? Is there any, Corey, do you have anything to add or any comments or anything like that?
No comment,
I
aside
do
from
wanna
what's
read
in the staff comment for the staff report.
I got that.
That's it.
So with I've got 2 copies of that, okay. So, I do want to read into the record, we received a letter. This is from the Echo Salon, from Brendan and Sylvania Bricklin. Am I butchering those names?
Not to me.
Okay. Dear members of the
I don't
Hyannis
know
Main
where this is
Street
going.
Waterfront Historic District Commission, I hope this email finds you well. We are writing on behalf of Echo Salon and Spa located at 548 Main Street in Hyannis. We are reaching out to express our full support for the proposed sign and main entry door changes submitted by our neighbors across the street, Smith Family Popcorn. We have had the pleasure of observing their business over the years, and they consistently demonstrate a high level of professionalism and responsibility as business owners. We believe the proposed updates will only enhance their storefront, but will not only enhance their storefront, but will also contribute positively to the overall aesthetic and vibrancy of Main Street. Thank you for your time and consideration. We are confident that these changes will further elevate the historic character of our area, and we wholeheartedly support Smith Family Popcorn's proposal. Please do not hesitate to reach out if you have any questions or require further information. Warm regards, Brendan and Sylvania Bricklin. That was the only letter that came in on that, right? Just wanted to make sure I'm not missing anybody.
That's super nice. I didn't know that was coming.
Well,
That's very nice.
Well, the other reason to, is
She
the,
emailed it.
is to, now you know you can have nice neighbors that really appreciate you.
No, yeah, we like that. So.
Okay, so, commissioners, how do we feel about it? I see some nodding heads and some pretty positive
Great.
sounds.
Yeah, pass it through.
Thanks.
So, we'll come to that question. Do you want us to just vote on both of them, or would you like us to take each one separately?
I think we can just do both, right?
Okay,
That makes
that's
sense.
why I like to wait till this point so you see what the reaction is.
Got it.
If people are saying, well, I really like the sign, but I'm not so sure about the door, then
Makes sense.
okay?
Yep.
All right, so, and actually, I didn't bring my motion thing. Do we have a motion? I usually keep them in the folder. So, would one of the commissioners like to make a motion for the, motion on the findings? And this is with regard to, well, yeah, let you state it, whoever's gonna do
Okay,
it.
sure. I move that the commission find this application for the changing of the doors and the signage at 541 Main Street, Hyannis, to be compatible with preservation and protection of the district.
Is there a second?
Second.
Chris?
Kevin?
Yeah.
All right, so let's just, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so everybody is voting. Commissioner Crowley?
Aye.
Commissioner Watson?
Aye.
Commissioner Matthews?
Aye.
Commissioner Doherty?
Aye.
Commissioner Cronin?
Aye.
I also say aye. Would a commissioner please like to make a motion for the certificate of appropriateness on both items?
Sure. I move to issue a certificate of appropriateness for the application for the change of doors and the signage located at 541 Main Street, Hyannis, as described in the submitted materials.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, let's go around the room the other way this time. Commissioner Cronin?
Aye.
Commissioner Doherty? Commissioner Matthews?
Aye.
Commissioner Watson?
Aye.
Commissioner Crowley?
Aye.
I also say aye. Well presented. Job well
Awesome.
done, you got it?
Thanks so much, everybody.
I like that,
Appreciate the time.
really.
Thank you.
I do like that.
Awesome.
Looking forward to seeing Neptune, Smith's
Yep.
Neptune.
Hey,
All right.
Bill Pickle.
Yep, exactly.
I want to, you were behind Neil when I was doing it. We have a very special guest with us tonight, and that's Sarah Koja. And we're really pleased to have her here. And sorry to put you in the beginning and behind. I was trying to remember.
No worries, that was quick.
Anyway, so please have a seat. Or standing, however you want to, however you're comfortable.
I think I might stand, if
And
that's okay.
Sarah's doing the workshop on public art and the local historical arts.
All right, thank you. So my name is Sarah Korjeff. I'm the Historic Preservation Specialist with the Cape Cod Commission. And I was asked to come tonight to give you some background information and to sort of guide a discussion about developing mural guidelines in the historic district. So what I want to cover tonight is to talk briefly about sort of opportunities and challenges with developing these guidelines, do a quick recap of the legal issues involved, and then really focus in on sort of the basis or the most important issues to consider when developing mural guidelines. And at that same time, talk about some best practices, including looking at some other communities off Cape that have developed guidelines and that could be a good starting point for you all. And then after that, move on to some suggested guidelines for your board to consider. And then move on to discussion, questions, and talking about possible next steps.
Can I ask, is it also on public art in general?
It could be. So I was asked to focus on murals, but sort of a lot of what I have to say will sort of cross into public art in general.
Okay.
right. So in talking about opportunities, one of the big opportunities in addressing public art in the historic district is to allow broader stories to be told, to sort of present messages that go beyond what existing historic buildings in the district can tell. Also to add vibrancy to the district, particularly in empty spaces, and to give an opportunity to engage local artists and sort of add to the amount of activity and sort of interest in the district, which often can support local businesses and help with the economic interest in general. But sort of balancing that are some challenges. Obviously, your main purpose is to protect historic resources and historic character in the district. So obviously, any guidelines that you put together, you want to make sure that they're protecting the architectural integrity of the important buildings in the district, and also protecting the general character of the historic district. Now, I know you've had some presentations made to you about the legal issues involved, and Allison's here in case there are specific questions once we get to discussion, but I really just wanted to refresh your memory about those as we move on. So the main issues really are to always remember that art is characterized by the courts as as First Amendment protected speech. So that really sets out some very specific guidelines or specific rules in terms of what you have the authority to regulate and what you don't. Also acknowledging that art is subjective. And so because of that, it can be very tricky when you're reviewing something you don't have sort of in contrast to looking at historic building protection. You don't have the basis of knowing that there's a very specific historic feature here that needs to be protected. And so there's a potential for people to have a lot of different opinions, and that can lead to some difficulty when making a good decision. Decisions have to be content neutral. They can't focus in on the art itself. They can only regulate time, place, and manner, which is essentially the location you allow this to happen, the size and scale of the art that you allow, and the manner in which it interacts with the historic district and maybe has an impact on specific either structural features or building features or landscape features in the district. So finally, the goal is to create guidelines to help you avoid arbitrary and capricious decisions, give you a really solid basis for making your decisions. So the real basis for setting up guidelines for public art and for murals is, I think, 4 primary things. First, remembering again, it has to be content neutral. You have to limit your guidelines to size, material, and placement. And I have in parentheses here, there's been a very interesting discussion in the listserv for the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions, which is, as you can imagine, nationwide. There's been a big discussion about guidelines for murals and for public art in general. And I just want to say that the vast majority of jurisdictions that have historic districts and are looking at public art have chosen not to review public art unless it physically impacts the historic buildings or sort of identified significant landscapes in their districts. And the reason for that is because they've had really difficult occasions, like have a difficulty with their board sort of all being on the same page and sort of feeling this, knowing a good way to, I guess, make a solid decision about whether or not a piece of art is appropriate in the district. It's been too difficult for a lot of people to sort of relate a piece of art to the historic structures around it, because there's not an obvious sort of connection. So in general, they've really encouraged only focusing on guidelines for art that physically impacts the historic properties.
Is there a copy of this presentation we can have anywhere to
If you could
Or
send
is that,
you
yeah.
can send out or?
Yeah, definitely.
if all the commissioners
Just
could
to
have
review it
copies.
as we go on.
Especially because it pertains to all of public art, which is what this is on tonight, the public art factor. I think was also to answer specific questions.
Great, so besides sort of the legal basis, obviously think about the purpose of your board and the historic district is to protect important historic structures, to protect his cultural landscapes and historic sites, and in general, the character of the character of the historic properties within the district. Also looking at another important basis is to look at the character defining features of the historic district. And that can be character defining features of particular very prominent buildings, or it can be character defining features of the district as a whole, like core areas where you have a great concentration of historic buildings, or areas where there's a great deal of public open space as part of the district, where if there's a certain kind of architectural style that's consistent throughout a portion of the district. Those are all sort of character defining features of the district that you want to consider and that you would be appropriate to consider in developing your guidelines and regulating art in the district. And then finally, I think looking at historic significance. Obviously, you have many structures in the district. Some are more significant, more important than others. And there's a very interesting map that was put together as part of the historic preservation plan for Barnstable in 2011. Back then, the town hired a team of historic preservation consultants to actually look at every single property within the boundaries of the Hyannis Historic District and to identify them by kind of tiers of significance. So in this map, the darker pink color or darker red, the darkest red are the most important historically significant buildings in the district. And you can see on this sort of blown up section of the key that there are gray properties that are not contributing to the district. So they have no historic significance. They're within the boundaries of the district, but they don't hold a building that has historic significance. Whereas there are a lot of other properties that have either minor, moderate, or moderately significant significance in the district. In looking at the map, now recognizing this is 14 years old, so there have been some losses of buildings and some new construction since then, but you can pretty easily see areas where there's a concentration of darker colored pink, that those are among the areas with the greatest significance and the more sort of a core of important historic character. And you can consider that when you're looking at where to allow public art in your district. So thinking about best practices in developing your guidelines, these are just some obvious things I think that very much pertain to your purpose and your goals. Historic features should not be altered by any public art that you allow. Historic features should not be covered by any public art that you allow. Any proposals should be what's called reversible in terms of any impact to a historic structure or its materials. And murals or art shouldn't block views of important historic buildings, historic spaces, or features. And then finally, the scale of murals or public art shouldn't overwhelm historic buildings or the overall character of the neighborhood and the district. So what I want to do is walk you through a couple of other communities that have developed mural guidelines, some of which have sort of broadened into public art, but are generally focused on murals. And I can start by saying, we kind of looked around the Cape and Massachusetts and didn't really find any great examples there. So instead, we've looked farther afield. But I think the fact is that the purposes of these historic districts are very similar to the purposes of yours. It's just that the actual buildings there are different from the ones you have. So I think they're good examples.
Virginia Main Street is where in Virginia?
So Virginia statewide Main Street program, they actually developed guidelines to be used throughout the state.
No, no kidding.
So Frederick, Maryland, the state of Virginia, Frankfort, Kentucky, and Milwaukee, Wisconsin are 4 nice examples that we came across. In Frederick, Maryland, they put together this nice sort of one-pager to let people know about their guidelines, their sort of criteria for public art in their historic district. And I should mention they're a little bit unique in that they have two entities that review public art. They have a public art commission, which is the first step if someone's proposing art in the historic district. And the commission reviews the art itself and determines whether it sort of meets their own guidelines. And then if it passes that group, then it moves to the historic district and they can focus on the placement, the scale, and the size.
So
those
a question,
bigger issues.
that art commission, they can rule on, do they have to stay content neutral or are they actually judging content?
My understanding is they have to stay content neutral, but they're looking for different things. They're looking at the quality of the art, and they might actually have guidelines that sort of create a framework for a type of art that they want to see in a particular district. But it has to be, they're still going to be subject to the same
Guidelines.
First Amendment restrictions that this board would be.
But what Sarah has said is that it then goes on to the historic.
No, I know, that,
And
but
then
I'm trying to see
that's
if this art commission has a different criteria to judge on than the actual, historic commission.
Right, so they do have different criteria that they're using, but they still are limited to that time, place, and manner.
That doesn't make any sense to me. They have criteria on art that has to be approved by them, but they don't approve everything.
And what she's saying is they have a commission made up, an art group that decides whether or not it's artistic and appropriate as art in itself. And then it has to go to the historic, but this is in the historic when it's in a historic district. It then goes to the historic commission to then have final
How
say.
is that staying neutral?
Well, they would have to still.
Yeah,
be
so I'm gonna say
neutral.
it's not unlike having a project that has to be reviewed by both your Conservation Commission and your Planning Board. They're each looking at two different things. And in this case, it's, the Art Commission is looking at, I'm reading it right off of here. Let's see, they're looking at,
Height, massing, scale, materials.
yeah, that's gonna be the Preservation Commission.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, you know what, they don't actually say specifically what
So,
the
I'm
criteria,
sorry, I
because
can
we're
contact
focusing
them.
on historic district, but
If I
Anyway,
may, Sarah,
yeah.
just
Go ahead,
I think I
Allison.
could probably try to answer the question. I think that a public art, what is it called? Public Art Commission will have a better idea of the manner of the art, what kind of materials they're using. They could even maybe go into color. I know that that's always based on our conversation. That one is a little, blurry. But I think that they're going to focus. They're still tied to the content neutral piece, but they're going to focus more on the artistic piece of it. Their Historic Preservation Commission is focused on, I think, the historic characteristics of like the building material. So can this art go on this building that's 200 years old and potentially could damage it? That's what I think where the difference
And
may
in
be.
historic area, if it's Canadian to character.
Yeah, they also
And
may
size.
they may review art like community wide too. Is it just for her? I think maybe they're
Correct.
town wide and then it's narrowed down to historic commission
Yeah.
too.
but I think it's important just to remember that the historic board in Frederick, Maryland is set up its guidelines based on what they can they're allowed to focus on, and that's what I think could be a good model for you all. And I've pulled out what I think are really some of the most important aspects of their criteria. They look at the project's relationship to character-defining features of the facade.
Anyway.
They look at the project's placement within the historic streetscape or landscape. They look at any physical impact on the historic materials, so of applying any kind of art to a structure. And they look at the project's height, scale, and massing as it relates to the scale of the historic setting. So those are actually things you're gonna see, or many of these things you're gonna see repeated through each of the examples.
And let me just make sure I clarify. So for example, number 2 there, the project's placement within the historic streetscape and landscape. For example, you could say, you look at these, what are they called? Significant buildings. You could say, you know, we can't put, or we would not like to put art next to this, you know, that would, you know, damage, or that would be on this significant building because it's a building with a lot of character, with a lot of, you know,
Integrity.
a facade. Yeah, exactly. So that would be that number 2.
Right,
Okay.
that's a good
And
example.
I want to remind the commissioners that we were talking about art in general in the historic area. And can I ask you, did you contact this information? Did you contact them and they sent it, or?
No, just
Okay.
available online. Yeah, and through a listserv. Like I said, that there's this big discussion that was already out there. Several of these are communities that we're posting on this
It's
list.
good to know that we're not the only board and community that's having the same kind of an issue.
Right, and I can tell you, you know, I mentioned that we didn't find any great examples in Massachusetts. I know there are other historic districts in the greater Boston area that are looking at creating guidelines also. So if I can move on to another one, so Virginia Main Street program has compiled a bunch of guidelines. You can see many of them, but again, pulling out sort of what I think are the most pertinent and significant.
Using murals as an example.
Yeah, yeah, well, and
Of
so
public art.
these, a lot of these are, so this is specifically mural guidelines. These are because they're only reviewing murals in Virginia, at least in terms of their recommendations here. So there, murals should be in scale with the district and with surrounding buildings. Murals should not be painted on previously unpainted masonry walls. They want to see murals on side or rear elevations, not on primary facades, not above the roof line, and not over any architectural elements. And they also clarify that murals should have no sign content, that logos or company advertising is not permitted, and in their definitions, they clearly spell out what is a sign versus what is art, so that there shouldn't be confusion about that, and people wouldn't be able to pass off a mural like as really when it's something that is advertising for their
That's a
business.
great point. I never thought about that.
Yeah, well, we actually had that, in things that we have applied on agreements for guidelines in the past in different areas.
So moving on to Kentucky. So an interesting thing about the Frankfort, Kentucky mural guidelines, again, specifically murals, is they have a map of the historic areas in their jurisdiction, and it's color-coded based on sort of different character aspects. The green area is actually a residential, predominantly residential zone. The red area is their central business district, so with mostly commercial uses. The tan color is sort of a mixed residential and commercial, and the sort of the yellow up near the top is a multifamily residential zoning district. And they've spelled that out because they specifically want to treat those areas differently. And Frankfort, Kentucky, and looking at their entire jurisdiction, said, really identified in their guidelines that they would like to focus murals in non-residential and mixed-use buildings. So specifically in their central business district. And that's something you can do if, I mean, obviously they have a very large district and they have a reason. They're trying to, or they came to the decision that it was less advantageous to have murals in residential areas and more appropriate to have it in commercial areas where there's a higher level of vitality. So they go further to say that they do not want to see murals located on principal facades of buildings, that murals shall not cover or detract from any architectural features of the buildings, and they have a special review process for murals that are proposed on either residential structures or on commercial properties or non-residential properties that abut a residential property and face directly to one. So that's an interesting recognition of sort of the residential versus commercial and potentially different impacts.
What do they mean principal facade?
So the primary facade, usually where the front entrance is, or could be the entrance that, or I'm sorry, the facade that faces the main road. And then the final example I want to walk through is Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Again, mural guidelines. So you'll find we found a lot of these jurisdictions were really focused on murals rather than public art in the broader sense.
Which is why this is the example that's being used.
So in Milwaukee, I think you'll recognize some of these ideas, but really the primary ideas in their rules were that murals would not be allowed on elevations directly facing or parallel to sidewalks and public ways. So that's a little different from what we've seen in the other ones. No mural, they get into the idea of size. What's the appropriate size in their particular district? No mural shall exceed 50% of the wall area or twice the allowed wall signage. So, and whichever is smaller, they say. And just by way of comparison, in your district, the maximum wall signage is 50 square feet. So twice that would be 100 square feet. So that's the, for their district, that's what they determined was the appropriate scale. They also found that murals would be limited to one wall of a building. They would only allow it on one wall. And murals are not permitted on unpainted masonry or wood siding with surface details. So essentially not covering significant features of a historic structure. All right, so suggested guidelines for Hyannis, things for you to consider. I think one of the most appropriate things to start with would be to identify places where you might want to specifically discourage murals. So thinking back to that map, that 2011 map, buildings that have a very high historic significance, they have a lot of architectural detail, a lot of historic integrity. That's probably not an appropriate place to have a mural or potentially other forms of art that might physically impact the structure. You could also decide, based on some of the examples we saw, that front facades are not appropriate for murals, or street-facing facades, or any facades that have significant architectural details. And then it's also for your consideration to think about residential areas. Do you want to discourage them in residential areas, or do you want to encourage them at a certain scale that might be appropriate? Do you want to discourage them in key historic spaces and potentially in historic core areas? And when I say historic core, what I mean is those areas where there's a real concentration of significant historic properties. So balancing that, your board could also identify areas where murals might be encouraged on non-historic commercial buildings, buildings outside of the historic core, building facades that don't have any historic features or that don't face Main Street. Those might all be completely appropriate locations. And you could also identify some scale and size limits if you feel that that's appropriate for the district. You, based on looking back to some of the examples, you could limit the size to 50% of the wall if it's the wall area. If it's adjacent to an historic area where it'll be very visible, but you might decide that you don't have to limit that size in rear alleys or walls that are not adjacent to a distinctive sort of historic space. You could also put limitations on neon colors. You could limit lighting. You could prohibit videos. You could essentially lay down that you can't damage historic materials in any way as part of this. So those are all examples of things that are fit within the appropriate parameters and sort of what's allowed legally for your board to regulate.
Let me ask a question. So you can limit neon colors without being a problem with the
I have a
content
question
neutral?
on that too. Is that not content, that is not content
It's content neutral unless there's a significant, like if the color is significant to the piece of art, it's content neutral. That's why I was saying that's a blurred line a little bit. I think for the most part, you'll be able to regulate color. But again, if someone comes to you with a presentation and then says, well, you know, particularly the flag of, you know, this, I've come up with this example before, but the flag, they want to do the colors of this flag of this individual they're trying to honor. I mean, that to me is considered
Yes.
significant to the piece of art.
It's
So that-
necessary for the piece of art, but to
Exactly,
have
so
like,
yellow,
yeah,
you know, may not, depending on what kind of yellow it is, may not fit within your guidelines, but there's also a lot of yellow and a lot of flags.
gotcha.
So it's just, that's going to be a case-by-case basis.
Let me ask you another question. We have an area of Main Street right now that's sectioned off for spray painting, you know, art. Could
Can I just very quickly, we want to be careful not to speak about
No, I'm
any
just
specific.
asking a question.
Okay, all right.
So we have an area that is dedicated to that. We have a community art wall. Can you put in regulations or guidelines, whatever, that is the only place where spray paint art is allowed in the historic district? And you can't do spray paint art any other place? Or is that content neutral problems?
And I want to also be careful because we do not want to speak about any specific.
All I'm asking is,
Talking about spray paint.
Well, so let me just jump in and say, I think if you picked any one location and it was the only place you would allow something, that would be overly limiting. I think you'd have a hard time justifying that. If there was only one non-historic building in your entire historic district, and you said, you know, this is the only place that we think murals would be appropriate on the walls of the building, maybe that's a justification. But you don't, I mean, that's obviously not gonna be the case in any historic
I have a
district.
question. That word limit neon colors, are you talking about the neon gas light, or are you talking about the vibrancy of a neon color?
This is the colors,
Okay.
not light,
Not
lighting
the
separately,
lighting, so,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so I think, and that's an example I didn't come up with myself, it's, you know, being used in one of the 4 examples that I gave you, or the 4 communities that I gave you, so I think it can be done. It's just gonna have to be very carefully defined, probably, if necessary, but I will say that it's something that I only saw proposed in one of the communities. All right, so just for additional consideration and sort of to help you with your thought process, I thought it would be worthwhile to think about 4 different buildings in your historic district. So just recognizing that you might treat some differently. So you could have a National Register property, so a property that's been identified to have a high level of significance, like the Hyannis Public Library at 401 Main Street, and think about how you would feel about having a mural applied to a wall of that building. And similarly, another significant historic building, not on the National Register, but significant, the First Baptist Church at 486 Main Street. You know, how you would feel, I think everybody, I included some photographs down at the bottom, I think everybody would agree that any kind of mural would be inappropriate on the front facade of that building, the primary facade. But I guess it's a question to me, if you go around to the back, where the cemetery is, there are some later additions and, you know, parts of that structure that don't have architectural detailing. How do you feel about that? So that's something just to consider. Do you want to completely rule out, you know, important historically significant buildings, like all facades, or do you want to address it on a case-by-case basis and recognize that there might be a location on the rear or side of a significant building that might be okay? And then also just, again, getting at the idea of residential areas versus commercial areas. A historic building on South Street, the Captain Bacon House at 379, sort of a Greek revival building with a yard around it, and just thinking how that's quite different from the very active pedestrian-focused area along Main Street with the, you know, busy sidewalks and such. And then finally, an example of a non-historic building, I'm guessing that was what the laughter was for. So at 500 Main Street, 500 block, there you've got a large parking lot, you've got some sort of mid to late 1900s buildings with very long unadorned facades. You know, that may be a perfect location in your mind for some mural art, and just being able to identify those. I think that property appears as gray, on the 2011 map of sort of significance of the district. All right, so that brings us to more discussion, next steps. Some possible next steps for you are putting together a working group to sort of focus in on this issue and talk about some of the questions and how you would like to address them. You could engage a preservation consultant specifically to help you update that 2011 map, that bring it up to date in terms of what buildings have been lost, what buildings have been changed, and sort of how some may have been restored and be even more significant than they were at the when sort of considered in 2011. And you're also welcome to consult with the Cape Cod Commission about sort of any drafts that you put together. If you want to ask for comments and thoughts, would be happy to be involved at that level.
We do have a working group. We've been working on it for 3 years now, 2 years, something like that. We have all, but we're just about there. It's only one page that's left out, and we wanted to educate ourselves on public art, which is, we've already had the pleasure of the edification from our town attorney's office, who did a fabulous job on advising us and giving us some information to consider. And then we also wanted to involve the Cape Cod Commission when we finally get that last part taken care of. Obviously, it's going to go to the town attorney's office. It's going to go to the working group, from the working group to both the HHDC and the planning board. But we would also very much, we thank you for the offer of Cape Cod Commission also having a look at it and giving its rubber stamp.
So
Is there anything else? Is there anything
That-
else?
That's all of the presentation. I'm happy to answer questions, or if you want to monitor the discussion, or
First of all, I want to say thank you very much for a great presentation. Just to make it clear, this was on a public art, and it was just an example. It was the use of murals, but it applies to all the different types of art in the area to consider. So we have it both legal and we have guidance on that. Some of us have art background, some significant, but also applying it to a commission is also important on our guidelines. So I'm going to open up. Remember, it's not about anything specific or any application specific, but if any of the commissioners have any questions, Sarah's very kindly offered to answer them.
So, real quick, I've seen the draft that the committee has put together. I've offered some stuff to the draft to the committee as well, the ad hoc committee. And I think this changes everything. I think
That's why
you could take that and just put it aside and start from scratch and start working with these parameters we're looking at here, because they're a lot different. Ours are too general, too.
I think we have other opportunities based on this that
Yes,
we can do to
to
help.
change
structure
I
it.
agree.
Sarah, would you
I
come
think
up
your
and join?
suggestion for Hyannis, I think there's a lot of great material in
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And
well,
we were kind of off.
Yeah,
Track.
we weren't, I think this presentation is what we've been looking for. I mean, to be able to now come up with a suitable legal guideline for public art, in our district. I think that's really important. So I appreciate this a lot, and especially you said that we can get a copy of this and stuff like that too. So I'm sure the ad hoc can take a look at this, and everyone who's not on that, we can make our own suggestions. But I think this, in my mind, changes what we've been working with so far.
How would we get a preservation consultant to update this map?
Yeah, I agree with that too.
we have people that work for the town who are preservation
Correct.
specialists.
Yeah.
because this was done 14
We
years.
can consult with
And-
somebody to give us a kind of an idea on the cost to update, and depending on the cost, how we would approach going out to bid.
That'd be great.
That's why we've waited until
Update
now,
this.
so we had the presentation, we've had the legal input, we've had Sarah's input. And so we want to make sure everything is squeaky clean and that it also works in of all types of art. I mean, we have had different types of art presented to us. We have a statue, we have sign art. We couldn't think of anything else to call it than an art, not just a sign. It's outside one of the restaurants, it's very artistic. let's just call it art, but and we've had other things in art that have come before us. So it's something that we wanted to have an education on, not just on what art is and various types of art for some of us, but also on how it applies in a historic district. So any other questions from the commission
No,
with
I think it's
regard
wonderful.
to?
Yeah, that's
Thank
great.
you. Thank you.
Really
Outstanding.
Sarah, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We'll take you up on that.
Yeah.
And I'll probably, if you want to stay, please do, because we'll be discussing it.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so, anything else from the commission? Are you leaving us, Kevin? Oh, you're going
I'm gonna
back.
go back one seat. I couldn't see very well the other way.
You're gonna tell me you're done for the night.
Yeah, I'm done. Good stuff, I'm out.
If you want me to.
I think this is a great start.
I can take it down.
Get it into the committee, we'll put it together and come back to the commission and then, take it to planning.
I have no doubt with this presentation that we can come up with a better plan than we had before,
I
and
think it's
we'll,
gonna be pretty easy.
yep,
Yeah,
It's been pretty
Pretty
easy.
straightforward.
yep.
okay, so, now I've shuffled everything about. We're just about there. We're only gonna have a few more minutes. I would like to say something to you at the end, if you don't mind. So that's the presentation, a clarification on the workshop on public art in the local historic districts. I don't think there's any matters not reasonably anticipated.
Just
Oh,
bring
I'm
one
sorry,
subject up.
Commissioner Crane.
One of the things that happens this time of year, spring's eternal and Main Street comes alive again. Do you think it might be appropriate or to ask the bid to maybe send out reminders to the businesses as they opening up for the season about the new guidelines? We have new guidelines that we have now shared with the planning department.
I don't mind getting a copy. I mean,
Just
the
to
head
have
of the
them
bid
go
is Elizabeth
through.
Worthbank. She's very approachable.
Yeah, and just maybe they could send a quick reminder out to their groups to have them look at their
a good idea.
facilities, if they're
When
gonna
it's done.
wanna paint and refresh or something like that, remember that what they do need to have approved and not approved.
When it's done.
What do you
When
mean
it-
when it's done?
when we're completely finished with the guidelines. Because there's still.
But right now, there's approved guidelines that we have, except for signage.
Except for
Public
one
art.
page.
What, yeah, except for one page, but
We
everything
can
else.
do. I don't think it's, in fact, that's a good idea. Let's do that.
Is it up on the website already?
Yes.
It is.
I
Yeah.
think
But-
it is.
but
I was trying to remember
I'm just
how
trying to see if
up
there's
to
a
date
way.
it
No,
is.
no, I know, I
To
just didn't know if it
remind
was
the-
up.
the
So-
businesses to
That's a very good idea.
take a look at it.
Thank you for coming up with that.
Thank you.
Kind of ashamed of myself, I didn't come up with it. Anything from our town council liaison? Anything more from the attorney? Anything more from staff? Okay, approval of the minutes, draft minutes from March 19th, is there a motion? Oh, by the way, who can vote on this? Was anyone not here on March 19th? Neil, you were not here? I thought you were, you put your hand up, that's why I was.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Once again, anybody that is not here, if you view the video, you can vote.
So is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Nice to see you. So, Commissioner Crane,
Aye.
Commissioner Doherty,
Aye.
Commissioner Matthews,
Aye.
Commissioner Watson,
Aye.
Commissioner Crowley.
Aye.
I also say aye. Those are approved. Motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned.
Next meeting,
Is that a second, Laura?
no, I'm saying next meeting, I'm just looking at.
Next meeting is April 16th, and then we have one on May 7th. Commissioner Crowley put a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Matthews. Commissioner Crowley.
Aye.
Commissioner Watson. Commissioner Matthews.
Aye.
Commissioner Doherty.
Aye.
Aye.
And I also say aye. Thank you very much to staff.